Lucia, thank you very much. You really embarrassed me by playing my song, but thank you. It was a nice touch. Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate you. I would like to congratulate Dianova, Monse, and you, Lucia, and Antonio, and all the people involved for taking this initiative, because I think it is very important. And the timing also, in my opinion, is perfect. I mean, I long for the day that we would be able to be with each other physically. After all, as I like to say, we're a hugging tribe. We even like the physical touch, but okay, this is better than doing nothing. So to me, talking about timing, I think it is about time that we shift the focus on the cannabis debate from the legal aspect, from the legal dimension, to the dimension that has to do with treatment and prevention. Of course, we cannot demonize a substance. Substances are matter after all, so they are something neutral. And of course, we strongly believe in the therapeutic community world that no person who uses a substance should go to prison because of using the substance. I mean, it's a matter of violating the very basic human rights. But in many ways, the debate now about the regulation of cannabis is no longer an innocent debate, in my opinion. We're talking about big profit now. We see a cannabis industry developing really fast and in the footsteps of the tobacco industry. And so now we can see also problematic use of cannabis. And that's where we come in as treatment programs, as prevention programs, and institutions as therapeutic communities. So for me, what you are doing and the research you are doing is really right on. It's right on spot because there are people among us who use cannabis and they have problems because of its use. So again, I thank you for this opportunity. I'm grateful for this opportunity that you gave to us as a federation, but I also congratulate you for this. So that's all from me for now. I wish all the best, not only for today's discussion and conversation, but also for the ongoing research that you have been undertaking all these months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fadon, and thank you for your warm words. Just now, I would like to put today's meeting a bit in context, although Fadon already mentioned it. As you may know, Dianova's network, we're actually composed by 25 organizations in 19 countries. We work in the social and health fields. And we are working in the field of prevention and treatment of addictions. From a grassroots level, we have outpatient and residential centers, but we also work at that advocacy level. And we're very active on an international platforms such as UN, the European Union, or the Organization of American States, and also collaborating platforms such as the World Federation of Therapeutic Communities or the EFTC. Given that the cannabis legal status has been so hotly debated in the international forums, but also given that we actually, as you rightly mentioned, Faizan, that we actually work with people presenting cannabis problematic uses, we thought that it was necessary for us to come with an institutional positioning towards it. And as we defend an evidence-based drug policies, we needed to have a strong, robust basis to work on that positioning. So this is why we contacted Antonio Jesus Molina Fernandez, who is an associated professor at the Faculty of Psychology of the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, to conduct the study on the regulation and legalization of the therapeutic and recreational uses of cannabis and their addiction, social and health-related risks. With that in hand, we could have the internal discussion and come up with Dianova's positioning on addictions and cannabis policies. In case you have interested, you can consult both documents there at Dianova's website. But what's interesting is that throughout this process, and leaving aside, as you said, leaving aside the legal status of cannabis, The study confirmed that there are serious weaknesses in the prevention and treatment programs for treating cannabis problematic uses. And that's why we have started to have this series of online meetings with experts to gather information on actually what can be done for improving those programs. And that's why we are really glad to be today with you, because we're here actually to listen to your expertise, to gather your expertise on this matter. Regarding the actions, there's also another action. Jimmy, if you can put one more slide, please. We're also arranging a Commission on Narcotic Drugs side event together with the EFTC, Rotary, and the European Coalition for Just and Effective Drug Policies on this exact matter that will take place on the 15th of April. And in case you're interested in receiving more information, please let me know and I will keep you in the loop. So now I would like to give the floor to Antonio Jesus Molina Fernandez, who will briefly present you the outcomes of the study regarding the needs and lacks of prevention and treatment. And then he will moderate the conversation, as we call it, that will consist on a series of thematic blocks, and where we hope we can listen to you and gather your expertise, as I said. So thank you very much. Antonio Jesus, yours is the floor.
A lot of thanks, Lucia. Always a lot of thanks, Lucia. A lot of thanks to Dianova for inviting me and for giving me the possibility, the chance to be here in this forum. For sure, I would like also to give thanks to the European Federation of Therapeutic Communities and all the members. I have the privilege to be part of this forum for a long time. So for me, it's an enormous pleasure to be here to present a part of the work that we are developing with Dianova and the study that we have developed, trying to find some lights in these strange days that we are living now. So a lot of thanks. And I think that this is very brave, very courageous by your side to develop and to present this webinar about one topic that can be controversial, that is very controversial, and it creates a lot of debate and discussion in the topics and in the forums that we are working. So I think it's important to talk about these aspects, as Fedon says, without the biases, identifying what kind of positions or limitations we have got and what are the possibilities and the chances and the offer that we are giving to the people that are needing now one response about what happens with the cannabis all around the world and in a specific context and a specific moment. So for me, it's a total honor to come to present this study that we have done with a lot of illusion and also with a very serious perspective. Now I'm going to explain briefly, because this part has to be brief, the technical part of the study and the main results and conclusions of the study. And then, as Lucia says, we will talk about, we will discuss in blocks about what is the perspective and the ideas and the beliefs and the perceptions and the offer and the possibilities that we are offering right now, that we are giving right now about the cannabis, the problematic cannabis use for the moment. So the study of the regulation and legalization of therapeutic and recreational use of cannabis and their addiction, if we consider it as in this way, it seems to be more research about the legalization of cannabis. But in fact, it was developed with different themes, sub-themes and categories, trying to analyze, not we can say all the aspects, but trying to go deeper in several aspects about the consequences that we have got right now, and we may have in short term or mid term with the cannabis regulation, the international cannabis regulation, and with the movement about the cannabis regulation around the world. It was not a sense about to be to agree or to disagree with the cannabis regulation, because all of us has got a personal opinion or even an institutional opinion about the cannabis regulation. But in a scientific perspective, our idea was we are going to collect, we're going to detect from all the perspectives about several topics, about several aspects of cannabis problems, of cannabis use, and the cannabis consequences. We're going to detect what is working, what is not working, and how can we improve what we are doing right now, what we are making right now. So we made the design of the study, the methodology. We decided to use qualitative methodology because our idea was to go deeper in the factors and in the aspects of the cannabis use. So also, for sure, we have used a complementary part of statistics, a quantitative part of analysis, but what we wanted and what we want was and is to go deeper in the factors and trying to find the things that are much more beyond the data. Sometimes we are talking about data when we're talking about the cannabis use and the cannabis consequences, that are right, but also we have to find what are the unexpected effects that can be seems to be positive or seems to be negative, but we've gone to find what are those effects and what can be the position and the ideas that we have got. So we use grounded theory, as I said before, to find themes of theme and nodes and categories of analysis. The themes and the themes were previously discussed, and the categories were established after the collection of the data, the collection of the interviews, with an active research perspective, because it was not an idea, the original idea to create one research only for the academy. What we wanted and what we are now showing to you is a report that can be useful for people, that can find some lines and some ideas to develop things or to change the perspective about several things. We have used also the consolidated criteria for reporting qualitative research to guarantee the quality and the sequence of the study, because sometimes we're talking about qualitative research, we can talk about several aspects of research, but now we have got different techniques to find if what you are doing has got the rigor or that needs to have research. And we use also into the research group multiple triangulation technique, triangulation of hypotheses, triangulation of methodology, and triangulation of theories, trying to find the best way to achieve the goals that we had when we were talking about the cannabis, that was trying to find what are the consequences, what are the main topics that are involved in the cannabis regulation, and what can be the areas that need to be improved, that need to be reinforced in a situation in which the cannabis can be or is going to be or is being regulated. So we made semester interviews to 18 experts, international experts, to a panel of experts that was also conducted. We selected the experts from 10 different countries, fundamentally Europe and America, a few representation of Africa and Asia. It was much more limited, but fundamentally because are the countries in which this debate is more active right now. And we selected representative informants from different areas of intervention, from policymakers, researchers and academic members, practitioners, people that are working in the field, legal aspects, and representatives of the civil society. The participants were for a group from several blocks. As then the data of the participants were crossed all the data. As we said, we made a triangulation, so we didn't use only the data from the participant policy making to talk about policies. We use also the information of other participants, trying to integrate all the perspectives about the cannabis use. And we selected people from different. We selected the informants from all the ideas of cannabis, people that are visually agree with the cannabis regulation, and also members of organizations that are totally against the cannabis legalization. So we decided to trying to look for the whole idea, the whole perspective of the cannabis use, trying to achieve a global perception about what are the situation of the cannabis right now. So these are the themes that is still on the codes. Today we are going to talk fundamentally about the prevention responses, the vulnerable groups and intervention responses. But there were much more aspects that are integrated in the studies. So if you want to find more information that we are going to talk today, you can find it in the report that is uploaded in the Dianova website, as Lucia Goberna says previously. Different themes were about the history of the debate, the consequence of consumption, the vulnerable groups, that is very important. There were identified several vulnerable groups like young people, and also young people, especially in educative level and social levels, also about the psychiatric consequences of cannabis use. But what we found in the research, it was a high problem, a high increase in the problems in education, training, formation, and also in different social indicators in young people. Another vulnerable groups was women and intersectionality. There were aspects about cultural minorities and about women with several psychosocial factors involved that highly increase the risk about to have consequences of the cannabis use. We made an analysis about the prevention responses, about how is being doing the adaptation of the programs for the situation, what are the limitations of the programs, what are the biases that we may find in the programs, and also about the intervention, what are the adaptive programs for cannabis users, what are the programs that have been working for a long time, what are the possible biases that we can find by the substances or by the gender of intervention. Also, we discuss about the research, we discuss about non-expected effects, as Felon says in the introduction. It's not the topic of the webinar, but as Felon says, the increasing of the marketing and the cannabis industry also is very significant, and it is also reflected in the study. It's not the topic for today, but when we talk, there is one part of the conclusions that I'm going to explain right now that also is connected with this idea that when we're talking about regulation of cannabis, also we have to consider in this aspect the increasing of the marketing and the business of cannabis that can be very problematic for the public health and for the intervention addictive intervention programs if we allow to increase this marketing and business cannabis industry. So the results that we found after the research were that is necessary, and I know that some of the results, and I think that they will be interesting for the discussion because are things that we consider that are necessary to talk with people that are practitioners that are working in the field. It's necessary to re-examine, to redefine the health and social aspects of intervention about cannabis use, because the models of action, the basic models of action, in opinion of the informants, are not adaptive for problematic cannabis users. Most of them were developed in other moments and in other situations of drug dependencies, in which the influence of other substances like opiates or cocaine or even alcohol were higher than today. But for cannabis users, most of the problem that we have got in intervention for the cannabis users is that the health and social responses for cannabis users really are not designed, implemented, and evaluated for cannabis users. So it's necessary to re-examine and to redefine the health and social models action, because another conclusion, another result that it was expressed by the informants is the actual ineffectiveness of the current models. So it seems for the informants to be meaningful and efficient. So it's not that they work for addictive behavior, so for drug dependence. Is that for cannabis users, the models that has got functional lifestyle, that has got a less perception of the problem, that has got less risk idea, that has got a lot of beliefs about the low problematic use of cannabis. Actual programs, prevention and intervention programs seems to be ineffective. So it's necessary to develop effective programs for cannabis users, not adaptation of previous programs for cannabis users. Is need to promote the research, not only the clinical research, that is another problem with cannabis, that the higher research that is now developed is clinical research, but there is a lot of cultural, social, and psychological factors that are not only clinical, but also need to be integrated in this research, trying to understand the impact, and including the impact is the unexpected effects, the negative unexpected effects of a regulation of cannabis. We can find that most of the countries that are developing moratorium systems on cannabis regulation, they are finding several unexpected effects in traffic problems, in labor accidents, in the increasing of people in not only in mental health services, only in general health services, a problem in educative system, educative level. So most of these situations need to be studied before a possible regulation of cannabis, because have got direct consequences in public health, and not only in public health, also in social services, also in educational services. So before, we have need to make more research, and to make research more without the biases about what can be the consequences of cannabis, because most of the research that we are finding, also I didn't say it in the previous part of the research, we made a bibliographical review using Prisma system, but it was not effective because most of the study have got the same conclusions that in the previous introduction. So they are not really making a study. They have got a very strong confirmation bias. So most of those studies, what are telling is the same that they expressed it previously. So it's necessary to develop research, to develop trials, even clinical trials. Why not? Even clinical trials without the bias or without the influence of several aspects that suppose that has to be the conclusions of those studies. And also, we need to understand that it's necessary the development of preventive comprehensive campaigns and early age with different professionals, because one of the idea there are a lot of myths and legends about the cannabis, positive and negative, that create a confusional sense in young population, and most of them are going to use the cannabis by the influence of their reference group that are going to be other young population. So we need to express clearly what can be the consequences, the problematic consequences, and also what are the risk factors and what can be the difficult situation for people if we want to have a clear prevention programs about cannabis. Most of the programs that are now developing are not are now working has not been developed for cannabis problems. Are programs for other substances problems or for other addictive behaviors, and cannabis is one part of the program. Are not developed, clearly designed, clearly adapted for cannabis users. And other programs are more close to treatment than to prevention programs. So we need strategies of early detection and early intervention to avoid the higher consequences of cannabis use in young population. And it's necessary to develop this kind of preventive comprehensive campaigns trying to change the perception of the cannabis. So social and health responses now seems to be limited. So most of the responses are similar to or are even the same global responses to other addictive behaviors. So it's necessary to change this idea, and most of them are not. Most of the cannabis users haven't got a clear treatment program or prevention program to go, because most of the programs has got not this visibility about if they are useful or not for cannabis users. So we can find treatment for problematic cannabis users. So I think that I don't know if all the countries, but in most of the countries there are possibilities, there are chances of treatment for cannabis users, for problematic cannabis users. But the problematic cannabis, the program for problematic cannabis users that we can find right now are not usually adapted to actual patterns of cannabis use. The genetic treated cannabis has got a different charge on THC, has got a different way to use. We find now much more being user of cannabis, so it's necessary to change this early intervention and treatment programs for this pattern of cannabis use. We can find now more functional cannabis users that are able, maybe they have got consequences in several psychosocial aspects, but are able to preserve other kind of factors that can be promoted to recover the program. So it's necessary to develop programs that may help to people to preserve, to keep these factors, and also to improve, to empower the problematic factors, trying to solve as soon as possible the problematic cannabis use, as soon and as good as possible. Also, we find the informants reported about a lack in early intervention on detection of problematic cannabis use. And about this lack, there are two different ways. One way is about the offer of programs that are in the system, normally in the health system, the health and the social system, that are more about intervention, are more about the aftermaths and the several consequences of drug use, but not about early intervention, not about to detect previously and to detect in risk groups and in subjects of risk, and trying to empower them, their skills, their competencies, their abilities, and try to find what are those skills and abilities for cannabis users. On the other hand, also in the study, there is a lack in the family training and in parental competencies and skills. We found that the cannabis use is in most moments accepted in the family structure. Even it can create a problem in the family structure. So we need to improve the skills and competencies of the family, the parental competencies of the family, trying to achieve a faster and stronger way to help to solve the problem of cannabis in contingent management, in training about the consequences of the substance, in making of decisions, in solving of conflicts, in several aspects that need to be adapted for this group of problematic cannabis users. So it's necessary to analyze without bias, and that is very important. We have to avoid it, but all of us has got one idea about cannabis, for sure. All of us has got one idea that can be that we agree or we disagree with the cannabis use, or we consider that cannabis is more or less problematic than other substances or things like that. But we have got a lot of people with problems derivated from the cannabis use. We have got a lot of demand of families derivated from cannabis use. We have got a legal context in which the cannabis regulation is increasing in several countries of the world, and even there are countries that have got a lot of experience in this regulation and legalization. So we have to, and things are changing, and the contexts are changing, and the patterns of use are changing. So we need to analyze and to detect without this previous bias and limitations what offer what we are offering when we are talking about health and social responses for cannabis, for problematic cannabis users. So there, for sure, there are some problems, as I said before, some aspects that we have to detect clearly. So we are not talking about an inoffensive substance, or we can't defend that there is an inoffensive substance, and we have to detect this. We have to improve this early intervention detection, trying to avoid the increase of consumption of cannabis consumption for young population. Even in regulation, if we're talking about regulation, it's clear that it has to be expressed that it's not allowed, not only for young people. In there are countries in which the starting age can be considered for 21, sorry, more than for 18, even if this the legal age, as some informants proposed that we can find this difference between the brain development and the legal age is not so easy. We want to avoid public health consequences and public health problems. So it's necessary to find this way, trying to avoid the highest problematic consequences that are for sure the mental health illnesses, the traffic accidents, the dropout of the school, and these social problems that we find. And about the treatment and about the prevention programs, instead to implement monitoring and follow-up strategies, trying to find what is working and what is not working, and what kind of uses of cannabis we are finding in our programs, because maybe we have got differences. We can find differences in a temporary use of cannabis that can have some kind of aftermaths, but can be controlled and can be recovered in a better way than for another being problematic use of cannabis that can increase the risks and the consequences of the use of the aftermaths of the use of cannabis. So it's necessary to develop prevention policies and to significantly reinforce the risk perception associated with the relation of cannabis, because what is expressed right now is that the cannabis is regulated, the cannabis is not problematic, and that's not true. We have to express that cannabis can be a problematic substance for a lot of people, maybe not for all the people. Maybe we can express clearly that most of the people that are using and are going to use cannabis and have used cannabis previously are not going to develop a problem derivated from the use of cannabis. But there are a lot of people that from the use of cannabis and other predictors and other psychosocial factors and other clinical factors can develop a problematic use of cannabis, and we have to express it clearly. That can be a problem. So it's not a situation that we can understand like without any kind of critics. We have to express what can be our doubts, what can be our perception about this situation, especially for the vulnerable groups, with a specific emphasis on adolescents, because it can affect in a very tough way for the life trajectory of the people. So when we're talking about the cannabis use, we have to express clearly that for the adolescents that now are using cannabis in a lot of places, and even without any kind of regulation or any kind of legal framework, we have to express that it can be very problematic for a lot of them, maybe not for all of them, but for a lot of them, and we have to give the vision about these consequences that may have the use of cannabis, and for sure the early detection and the intervention, the proper intervention for these problematic cannabis users. So this is the main topics of the study. As we said before, if you want to check the whole research, you can find it in Dianova's website in English and Spanish. It's possible to find in both languages. And well, this is what I want to present about the study. I hope not to have been very boring for all of you.
Not at all. Thank you very much. Also to that we recently translated it as well in French, in case you're...
Oh, thank you. I didn't know. Thank you.
So
Thank you very much. So now we are going to start. Well, is there any kind of question about the study? Do you want to make any kind of question about the study before to start with the open conversation? That I think that is the most interesting part of the webinar, is the open conversation. But if you have got any kind of question, for sure I will try to briefly answer it or answer them. Okay. Yes, Dr. Koyman?
Yes, I have found something recently in our country that we had a lockdown, so young people had to stay with their parents and they didn't get to meet friends. And They didn't go to school, and there is quite an increase of cannabis use at the moment among young people. As you know, in Holland, it's easy to get it. You go to coffee shops. The interesting thing was that the lockdown closed the cafes and the restaurants, but the coffee shops stayed open because it was seen as a necessary thing for people to have. In other words, so to avoid problems with the users. Did you see the same in your country, that there is an increase due to the problems they usually have, avoid going out with friends and so on, and that's not possible at the moment?
It's a very good question. What can be the consequences of the lockdown in cannabis users? We still haven't got clear data about what can be the tendency, but it seems to be that it has increased not only the cannabis use, the combination of alcohol use, cannabis use, and the use of several behavioral some compulsory behaviors like gambling and gaming. So that can be a tendency when we are talking about, for example, when we're talking about problematic cannabis users. Sometimes we use the idea that the cannabis is isolated from other kind of problematic behaviors, and it's not exactly what it happened. So the persons, the people that have got problems with cannabis use also have got problems with other behaviors, sexual risk behaviors, violent behaviors, especially in family violence like this, or gender violence like this. One of the topics why they are arrived to treatment, and also with behaviors like gambling or gaming, or now vaping with the use of these e-cigars and things like that. And in Spain, what we are finding, and which it seems to be, and it's true that I said it, we need more, not more data, we need to analyze deeply the data. It's also an increasing of alcohol use. Even alcohol in the house environment. So we are not talking only to go out for the use of the substances, it's to make it in the personal context of the people. So that's another thing. So when we're talking about the patterns of use, sometimes 20 years ago, it was easier to find persons that use only one substance: cannabis users, cocaine users, heroin users, alcohol users. But now it's very difficult. Now a lot of people are using a lot of substances. And a lot of young people even are using 3-4 different substances, and not only substances, also 1-2 problematic behaviors.
Yes.
So it's a different pattern, different combination. So if we put the focus only in cannabis use, for example, we may have the problem that we are forgiving and we are avoiding the intervention in other problematic behaviors. So that's a situation that we have got now. And probably lockdown has increased this combination of factors, because most of them maybe they didn't have the cannabis in one moment, but they had alcohol. So in one moment they increased the amount of alcohol and decrease the amount of cannabis, and when they have more cannabis, they increase the amount of cannabis. That's why, for example, when we are making now the research, we are talking a lot about being users, because most of them are using the substances in being, but not only the substances, also the behaviors. They use being for gambling, they use being for gaming, they use being for cannabis, they use being for alcohol, and it's different that it was 10 years, 15 years before. That is
interesting to share the situation in Holland when it started the use of cannabis in the 70s. I was asked to write a part in a book, the first book on cannabis, called Soft Drugs. Already the name shows that it was then seen, and also by the professional world, as not a very dangerous drug to use. There was seen no persons getting addicted. It even was said it was only used for a few recreational use and so on. So that was 51 years ago that I wrote this part in the book, the medical aspect of the cannabis use. And the book had a lot of influence because I think people start to see it as a non-dangerous drug. So that was the reason that the coffee shops were opened in 1980 in Holland, to say, well, why should you make a problem? In fact, we had only one person in the history who was in prison for cannabis use. That was one, and then they never put anybody in prison because it's so, why should be? It's not a dangerous thing to do. Now, the change in use is enormous in Holland. It changed from people using it for fun on weekends together with friends to get some experience like the hippies, to this century to a use for people alone at home. They're not going out, they don't go to school anymore, they have problems in the relationship with the parents or with other people. And they use it to feel no stress or to sleep better. That's the thing. And at the same time, the drug changed. It was no longer the same content of THC. It's changed from 3% to more than 30% at the moment. And now the problem in Holland is they try to start a regulation of the people getting cannabis, because it was totally, the program developed in a crazy situation that the aim was to make it a situation that they avoid to get into criminal hands, because he could get the cannabis at coffee shops from some small dealers that could grow it on their own. So it was a very idealistic idea. But what happened, the selling of drugs from in the coffee shops became in the hands of criminal organizations. They start to become bigger and bigger. They start to export cannabis. 80% at the moment of cannabis in Holland is exported. But they found also that it was even more profitable to sell other drugs like ecstasy, MDA. It is a party drug, and we in Holland are the young people are the largest user of ecstasy, and also we are the greatest exporter of these drugs, and we're exporting amphetamines. It all started, I think, from a very simplistic idea. Let's have a market for cannabis alone and none for the other drugs that could be persecuted and could
if I may say,
Now, I'm wondering if that's the same in your country, that you can see that the use of cannabis is not so much different from the use of other drugs. It's used to avoid feelings of loneliness, of feeling depressed or not feeling well. And it's used alone, not in groups. People use it at home. They even can have, you can phone people to bring it to you with a Vespa and give it the door. So it's not the same anymore. And then I found, first of all, I have another question, but is that the same use that you see now in your country, that it's in fact a hard drug, because people get addicted? One, before I stop, there was an interesting research done in Holland in 5 cities. Each city they choose as coffee shops, and they had a research of 600 people.
But maybe Dr. Koyman, this experience from Netherlands, maybe it's better for the discussion that we are going to have now for the open conversation, because in the open conversation we are going to talk directly about these topics, about experience in any country and about the idea. Well, if you have got question about the research, for example, you said we have find more people that smoke alone or smoke in groups. No, here we found both ways. We found that the initiative use of cannabis is more social use of cannabis, and most of them are not going to develop a problematic use of cannabis. But the main problematic use of cannabis is the people that smoke not only isolated, but the smoking being used, that most in a very intensive way, in very brief and intense episodes of use of cannabis. So the social aspect of cannabis that seems to be like the most visible use of cannabis, maybe it's not the most problematic use of cannabis. Maybe it's more problematic, the isolated use of cannabis, and it's more connected with emotional factors of use of cannabis, and not only use of cannabis and other and other substances and other addictive behaviors.
And just to add one thing regarding the drug use patterns after COVID, I have put in the chat a link to an MCDDA report.
That's right.
And you will also find more information on the European drug report from MCDDA.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lucia.
Okay.
And Oliveira also has got one question that is there any relation between the cannabis therapeutic use and the drug addiction? Well, it's a very nice question, and it has got two answers that maybe are also controversial. The first answer is that there is not clear direct relation between therapeutic use and the development of addiction, but addiction can be a very controversial concept when we're talking about cannabis use. Because when we're talking about the development of an addiction, we are talking about several more clinical factors. And about cannabis use, what we are finding is that the consequences are not only in the clinical ways, but also in the psychosocial aspects of the person. So, cannabis therapeutic use may develop an addiction. Well, I'm not totally sure, but with the perception of the therapeutic use, there are a lot of people that can affect in other aspects in their lives. Second part is that the therapeutic cannabis use as conclusion of the study, as a result of the study, is necessary to improve the research about therapeutic cannabis use, to be more clear about if the therapeutic cannabis use is balanced, is higher, or is lower than the other kind of pharmacotherapy. Because sometimes we're talking about that the cannabis use seems to be like magical. For example, right now, happening with the CBD and all this the cannabis light and things like that. And maybe we are talking about one pharmacotherapy, because in this case it's pharmacotherapy. One pharmacotherapy that can be effective, but with a lower effectiveness than other substances, with a lower effectiveness than other treatments. So maybe we are increasing this perspective about the therapeutic cannabis use, and we are not clearly explaining that the therapeutic cannabis use can be real, but not better than other substances, the other pharmacotherapy, and for sure, the therapeutic cannabis use doesn't justify the use of cannabis out of the therapeutic context. That is the problem that is now standing, that this therapeutic use seems to be like a reason to use recreational cannabis. So also that these are included into the report, the report of the research. So if you want to find more information about it, you can find it in the research. That's right. So we're going to start with the open conversation. We want to start. Well, the open conversation, the idea is to collect first-hand information about practitioners and professionals in the field, because you are in the field, you know the things in the field, and you have got your experience, as Dr. Martin Coleman said before, in the field and in your own country, or most of you in European level, European networks. So what we want is to share these ideas and these experiences in several ways, in an open conversation, without any kind of bias or any kind of limitation. Only time, please be as brief as possible, trying to give the chance to not all the persons maybe, but to most of persons to explain your idea and your perception about the problematic cannabis use. As you have seen in the first slide of the presentation, we have one survey, one poll done by Slido that we would like to share with you, with your opinion and your experience about cannabis. And if you agree, we will start with this part, with the part of the Slido. Sorry.
Wait, Jimmy, if you can pass one or two slides, they will see again the code. As I said, this is something new for us, so please be patient. We will ask to go to this website.
Oh, that's right.
www.slido.com, and then you will see that then you can enter a meeting code, and in there you should enter 92965, and then some questions will pop out. Okay, so let's give it a try. Some of the questions you have to write as an answer, and some of them are multiple choice. So the poll is open. You can start answering your questions.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't get the information well
Yes.
to see the.
You have to enter to this website. You can do it in your cell phone or in your computer, slido.com. Are you in there? Are you in this website?
The slides.com, but it's not installed in my computer.
No, it's a normal website.
Yeah.
It's like a regular website.
You don't have to download anything.
No,
Okay,
no.
I will. Let me see.
Slido.com. We have already 14 responses. We'll wait a bit more.
It's at slides.
Slido.com, join the meeting as participant, and then you
It
enter
is
the
Google
code.
Slides.com or?
Slido.com.
Oh, so Slides.com.
And then it says join the meeting.
Yes, and then the next is login slides. How do you do that?
No, there is a code. Enter the meeting, join as participant, meeting code, hashtag. Do you see that? So where you can write 92965. You have to enter.
Wait a minute. I have slides.com.
It's Slido.
And then I can choose in my computer for videos.
No.
Or shopping or what? I don't know.
No, I will send you the website. I will send you the information through the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't forget to put the hashtag before the number.
Yes.
Is it, Lucia? Is it in the screen?
Yes, just 1 second. I will close the poll now, this one, and then we'll move to the other one.
Let's try again. Slides.com, yes. And then I got a lot of possibilities and login slides or what?
It should be
Create and share presentations online.
Join as participant, it should be said. But it's not a, this is just an icebreaker. So it's not a big problem. Jimmy, if you want to start presenting.
Yes, for sure. For the first question, in which country are you based? As you can see, we have found a lot of people from Greece. Can you see it? Can you watch it?
Yes.
A lot of people from Greece. One person from Thessaloniki that I thought was from. I don't know why.
I am the one. I want independent Thessaloniki, just like Catalonia. Sorry to mention.
I don't know why, but I suppose it. I don't know. Thessaloniki. That's right. A lot of people from Spain, people from Belgium, from Portugal, from Malta. Oh, thank you very much. And the people from Iceland, Slovenia, Poland, Bulgaria, and Italy. That's right.
Great.
So thank you very much for being here. Let's
move to the next question.
That's right.
It's already online. You might have to refresh the page.
Maybe we're going to wait. We're going to wait until you will stop it.
Yes,
We will check it.
we'll wait a bit.
That's right. It's our first experience with the Slido.
Yes.
So
Well, I don't get it.
So let me close now the poll. It's
No.
closed.
in which field do you work with the problematic cannabis use? And the high number of people is working in recovery, intervention recovery, no in harm reduction, 20% on policy making and communication, 33% on prevention. It's very interesting. Thank you very much. And 20% in others. It can be in academy or research or any other field that you are working. So it's very diverse, very, very interesting. Thank you very much.
And let me open the last question.
Now it's changing, it's changing. It's increasing recovery. No, it's increasing prevention. So it's quite good.
And so now you should be able to see the last question.
The last question.
And in here you have to type an answer. So is everybody able to access the question?
Mhm.
I'll have to leave a bit more time. It's a complicated question.
It's also to think a little bit.
Yes.
That's quite good.
No, it doesn't work. The only solution is that, Anthony, if you can put on your screen a split with the information, so I can see it on your screen.
Maybe Lucia, you put in the chat the link to the
I put
slide?
it on the chat. You just have to click to that link. But anyway, this is the last question for the icebreaker. But you just have to go to the link that it's on the chat and then add the code. There is a just at the first page, there is a place where you say like join as participant, and then you enter the code and it appears. But we'll at the end of the session there will be another question, so we can give it a try.
Okay. Well,
so I am about to close. Just a few more minutes. There are things coming, answers coming, popping up.
That's right.
So let me close so that you can open it now.
That's right. Oh, a lot of diversity in the answer. A lot of diversity in the answers. Do you think the main weaknesses of the current prevention and treatment programs for cannabis problematic users? Lack of insider knowledge, that is very interesting. It's true that now we have got a lack to understand what is happening. Out of touch with reality, that is very interesting because sometimes it's real that in treatment things seems different than in the out of the treatment. The kind of intervention, lack of money, that is very tough, very tough topic, but it's true. It's absolutely true. It's true. Also, it's in the research. There is one problem in the in the investments and the grants and the budgets that are provided for example, for early intervention and for early detection. That are programs that need some kind of need some costs, fundamental, but to receive benefits in mid-term or long-term. So sometimes it's very difficult to develop these programs because of the budgets and the grants that you may access to. Missing consequences, yes, true. The prevention popularity, it's true that there are some aspects in prevention that now there is there's not, how can I say it clearly? There are some aspects of prevention that are in doubt sometimes. So we think that all the kinds of prevention are necessary, so are necessary to develop global strategies of prevention, not only to work with problematic groups, not only work with families of problematic people, not only with problematic persons. The lack of specific programs, that is quite good. Lack of funding is same the lack of money, but the program didn't join them because of the change of the world, but it's true. The lack of funding is very, very important, as I said before. The lack of the specific programs also, as is included in the study, is necessary to dedicate time and resources to develop, first to design, then to develop specific programs. The non-attractive services and the participation is true. Some of treatment programs has got one visibility, and it's real that we need to change the visibility of treatment programs if we want to be more accessible and more feasible for the people that has got the problem. So a lot of aspects that are included, and I don't know if there is any other answer or of them are. So it's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for using a Slido. Thank you for help us. So it's true. These are all the topics, and this is the moment of the discussion now. So now this is the moment that we have to discuss about how can we do these aspects and these topics, and how can we include them in different blocks about treatments, about profiles, the consumption trends, the motivation for treatment, the referral system for treatment, early intervention, the neutral assessing programs, the patient residential modality. Sometimes there is one discussion about this is more effective or patient residential modality. So if you have got experience in one of them or in both of them, please share with us. Access and evidence to programs, the people that drop out, why did people drop out these kind of programs? Why did what people is able to finish one of these treatments? Relapse prevention, social reintegration of people, and also in prevention, the improvement of universal selective indication prevention programs, family skills and competencies, and involvement of families, and the training needs for professionals, because sometimes we started to work at the end of the 20th century, and now we are in 2021, and we need to adapt our knowledge and our perspective to the new realities that sometimes is difficult and can be complicated. So we're going to distribute the conversation in 3 blocks, and treatment, prevention, and other aspects. So to talk about treatment, if you want to share with us your perception about what is the actual profiles of problematic cannabis users, what are the consumption trends of these problematic cannabis users, and what are their main motivation for treatment in problematic cannabis users, feel free to share with us. So whenever you want, you can start to share with us your experience and your ideas about how is working the treatment for problematic cannabis users.
So, Jimmy, I will be telling you who's raising the hands. I see Karin Mamo raised.
Karin Mamo.
The floor is yours.
Hello, first of all, thank you for this very interesting presentation. I'm wondering, most cannabis, especially in the EU, is smoked together with tobacco. Will you be considering this, let's call it special way of consumption? And do you think that it could be linked to problematic substance use, in the sense that I always explain this to my colleagues and students, which I am happy to see some with me today. When we speak about problematic cannabis use, it's very difficult to identify if it's just cannabis or if it's cannabis mixed with tobacco, because essentially the person is consuming two mind-altering substances in the same method of consumption. And also linked to higher THC levels, which potentially could be linked to risks. I think the fact that we are ignoring this method of consumption, which is very different from other methods of consumption, continues to negatively, let's say, direct us to a misconception of how maybe problematic cannabis consumption is developing. Thank you.
No, a lot of thanks to you, Karen. I totally agree with you. Sometimes, and this is also in the study, and this is an idea that is inserted in the cannabis users, this sense that cannabis is less problematic than tobacco, for example. Most of them use this idea that if they use marijuana, for example, is less health problematic than tobacco, but in fact, both of them are used together. Not only that marijuana may have health effects and health impact, is that they are used together. So we can separate the use of tobacco and the use of cannabis in the highest amount of people that are using cannabis. And it's true, and it was also in the study, this sense about the bias that the previous generations have got about cannabis use. In my mind, the cannabis use is the cannabis use that I saw and I had 20, 25 years ago in the university or whatever. But now we're talking about all those genetic derivatives of cannabis, in those skunks and super skunks that has got 10 times more potential THC than the natural substance that we saw time before. So in my mind, the cannabis use can be accepted because of these biases, this perception they have got. But now we are finding much more powerful and much more destructive uses of cannabis that also need to be clearly expressed and clearly adapted, the intervention for them.
And I think if I may add something from a southern country perspective, obviously the type of cannabis in Malta is very different from, let's say, the Netherlands or Spain. And something which is not mentioned even locally is that until before the Arab Spring, predominantly Malta had hash from North African countries. However, after the Arab Spring, obviously, trafficking from Libya and Tunisia got disrupted, and the country started to receive more flowers in the sense of cannabis buds. And obviously, the THC is very much different, and also the effects are very much different.
That's right.
And this is interesting, although for example, the National Report on Drugs states that the percentage of THC, I correct myself, that the potency, the purity of cannabis in Malta is 7%. And I find that a bit confusing, because is it that the THC or a purity from the hash? And I think when it comes again to map problematic substance use, especially if we're pinpointing at THC as being the leader in creating problems, I think it's also important to speak with the user and explain that these are different types of cannabis, and as you are explaining, there are different preparations and different levels of THC, which are important.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we just speak about cannabis as one
Ja.
whole block.
Ik zit in die zending, het lukt allemaal wel.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I'm going to.
Dus
Yes,
ik bel terug,
thank
dus het zal over een uurtje
Oh.
zijn.
Dr. Lot of thanks, Karen. Lot of thanks. Lot of thanks, Karen. Sorry, I was in silence. I'm Amphitryon put me in silence in that moment. Lot of thanks for coming. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's different presentations, different ways, different levels of THC, different ways of consumption, different ways to distribute the substance. Yeah, so it's necessary to adapt the strategy to these topics because they are different from one country to the other and from one place to the other. In Spain also we have got still, especially in the south of Spain, a considerable number of hashish users, not only marijuana users, like it happened, for example, in other countries. So we still have got a considerable number of hashish users. So, and most of them use marijuana, hashish, and tobacco. So they're not using only hashish or only marijuana. They're using both and tobacco. So it's different. It's a different situation that we have to consider as different, as new, and with different charge of THC in the substance. A lot of thanks for your question, for your comments, Karen.
Well, the comment that I like to make is, if you are aware of the results of the research in Iceland on cannabis use and the prevention, there's a very interesting program that was originated by Sig Gudbrandsson in Iceland, where they first did the research what is common in the situation of using cannabis in adolescents around 16 years old. They found out that there are three main points. One was that they did not feel that they had got enough attention from the parents. The second was that they were usually not coming home late at night, stand out, and that the parents more or less correlated that they came home after 10 o'clock at night to stay with friends. I'm talking now about the cannabis users. The third point is that they didn't do sports. So what they did is they did a huge program involving parents, schools, doctors in Reykjavik, what is a small city, although it's the capital of Iceland. And they found out that if the parents were involved and you could have three interventions. One is that the parents were asked to have once a week at least walking around in the nature or somewhere else with the whole family, once a week, at least. The second thing was that the government offered each child of 15 or 16 years old every year €400 to pay for their sports, to take sports. And the third was that the parents were told to get it clear that if you are not over 16, you are supposed to be at home at night at 10 o'clock. And because it was a big thing, it was on the television and they did reach almost all families, they were very successful in starting this program, and they did a research on it, and they found an enormous drop in the cannabis use, and even that also in alcohol problems among the youngsters. The youngsters that usually started to use the cannabis around 15 or 16 years old. And this was so obvious that also in the Netherlands now there are some groups that say maybe if it works in Iceland, it could work also in the Netherlands. So their main thing, I think, is that you'll see that if you have parents that are too busy, maybe they have their own business or no time, or if parents have other reasons that they have no time to go out with the kids regularly or to talk with them, that is one of the biggest risks that people start using drugs or drinking too much. Is that the same thing you found in your studies, that this situation that parents are not, and in fact it also in all this, that parents usually don't see cannabis use as a problem. Maybe they have used it themselves when it was not a problem. And so they are saying, oh, they're just using cannabis. Maybe some parents use it still themselves. So how is the situation in your research on that?
That's right. Yeah. Well, the situation is not the same as Iceland, because Iceland, I think that they started 20 or 15 years ago with an participative action strategy to decrease because they had a very big problem with alcohol, with tobacco, and also with cannabis use, I think, in the beginning of this century. And they decided to make a very participative action with this problem that is very, very interesting. It's true that this that's what we said at the end of the presentation, that are in the research, that it is necessary this training for parental competencies for the families, because it's one of the biggest risk factors, especially in the starting and in the severity of the cannabis use. Is the cannabis use is more severe for the people that haven't got enough social support, especially family support. That's why it's necessary to increase the training in skills and in abilities of the family, especially to detect the programs and also to manage contingencies that sometimes can happen, and to preserve, not only to be to attend to the use of drugs, trying to increase the lifestyle, the family lifestyle, and trying to increase the situation of the family. So that's very, very interesting. It's a topic that we have got a total coincidence with it, because it's necessary to increase. We don't have exactly the same data about that with the parents were working out increase the use of cannabis, but it's true that we've found that problematic cannabis users have got also structured families with family roles defined, but with less family skills, family competencies. So it's necessary to increase their competencies and their abilities if we work with the families.
Okay, well, one thing I didn't say is it also helped to have the national football team in Iceland much better, I think, because as you saw, it's incredible from such a small country how they did in the championships.
Yeah.
To get all young people being involved in sports, because that doesn't go with taking drugs, of course.
That's right. Yes, it's true. Also, it's in the research. Not only sport activities, leisure time activities. Leisure time is fundamental for this group, especially for young people, to create habits of leisure time, to read a book, to make some kind of creative arts, any kind of artistic expression. For sure, sports and physical activity, the combination of both of them, to have at least one physical activity, at least one more intellectual or creative activity. That is true. That is it's a very interesting topic. And it's true that this campaign with the Iceland national football team, that was very popular, I think, 4 or 5 years ago in the previous Euro Cup. I think it was because they were very popular in that moment. So I think it's very, very interesting. But what we have detected is that is the use of leisure time to improve the use of leisure time, to avoid to dedicate the use of leisure time to make nothing or to use only screens that are now the highest option for young people. So that is very, very interesting too. Thank you very much, Dr. Coleman.
Want to add, if somebody wants to share their expertise, please use the function raise your hand on the participation button, or just add it on the chat, please.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you can explain a bit more about the treatment itself, how it works, and what is the focus in the treatment, especially when you have it on an ambulatory basis. with people that are only using cannabis or mainly using cannabis. And you see other younger people, I suppose.
That's right.
Antonio, and just to know that Oriol Escolia's raised.
Ah, that's right. Oriol, whenever you want. Hi, Oriol.
Well, good morning, Jimmy, Lucia, Monse, Rui. Just first, I really want to congratulate Dianova for, I would say, this leading role to speak openly about cannabis and to meet, all together, just to hear this study, which I really congratulate you. I just wanted to, when I was hearing the discussion, just raising two issues. First, as I work in Barcelona, I come from Spain. You know that Spain is unfortunately one of the European countries with the highest use of cannabis. And we've been treating many adolescents in Proyecto Hombre, where I work for many years within specialized units called Proyecto Joven. And then in adolescents, at the present day, approximately as an average, the 70% of those who come to treatment had cannabis as the main substance of abuse. But in adults like 30, 40, 50 years old, treated in therapeutic communities or day centers, outpatient facilities, they don't reach more than 10% of cannabis as the reference drug. So I think this is one of the most critical reasons that explain the following. Cannabis is still for many adults, although it's not the first substance of abuse, but maybe it's the second or the third or the fourth, but it's there. Then when they start treatment, the therapist focus on maybe the main substance of abuse, neglecting to treat adequately and to address cannabis problems. And then that will have consequently less, the people will be less empowered to face and to protect themselves once they are in later stages of treatment, because this, and moreover, this, I would say, an increasing culture of cannabis. So they will have to face two problems: this expanding pro-cannabis culture in Spain, and also the having lost the possibility to work to strengthen the capacities to face this problem once they are in a re-entry or aftercare phases. So I would sum up saying that in adolescents, maybe you find like a low risk perception from the same adolescents who come to treatment. You also can find low risk perception from their parents, but at least you have high risk perception from the therapist, the practitioners. You know what I mean? But then in adults, you can even have also the therapist with low risk perception. So I think that we should take this very seriously and start raising the cannabis programmatic use also in adults while they are with us, so in order to help them better. I just wanted to raise this issue. Thank you.
It's very interesting what you say, and it's a bit in what I thought. In our country, in Holland, we had a detox center for adolescents only, and they were mainly only using cannabis. But the same group later on, when they are not completely recovered, come back not with addiction to cannabis, but with cocaine and other drugs with a low amount of cannabis. So my perception is that there are two ways: or they don't stop using cannabis and become a sort of loser in the society which use alcohol and cannabis a lot, or they are going to, if they are not stop using drugs, to other drugs like the more potent drugs like opiates or cocaine. Is that something that is a little bit like what you said?
Lot of thanks for sharing this your experience with us, dear Ariel, because it's true that you have got you and your organization have got a long experience in intervention for cannabis, for problematic cannabis users in young population, in Proyecto Joven. It's true, and I think that you have had a Proyecto Joven since 25 years ago. Started.
Yeah, even longer. Yes, we start to have the scene from the 70s. Yes,
that's right.
Beginning of the 70s, and even before the 60s were the first users. Yes,
that's right.
But that were hippies, huh? That was different.
That's right.
That was a smaller group.
And also, Oriol has said a very, very important topic about cannabis, because it's true that the more sensible, the more sensitive group, the more problematic group of cannabis users is considered young population. But it's true that cannabis maybe is not the main substance of abuse for people under treatment. But the cannabis can be a bridge to other substances, can be used in combination with other substances, can be used in parallel with other substances, can be used in a double consumption with other substances. So we can find cannabis inserted in a lot of treatments, but not as in a lot of adult treatments, but not as main substance of abuse, but as a problematic addictive behavior, and we have to consider it. And it's true, this mess that we have got right now about if cannabis is more problematic or less, or if cannabis is more controversial or less. We have got so much information about cannabis right now in our minds. Let's not forget that for a problematic cannabis user, cannabis is a problem, even if I don't consider cannabis a problem. That if one person has got a problem with the cannabis use, or have got a problem connected with the cannabis or other substance and cannabis use, is a problem. It can have consequences for him or her. And it's, in my personal opinion, need to be in my pocket. That is the place to be. Because we have to give, to provide some kind of help for the people. So it's very, very interesting what you said, that I totally agree, Oriol. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just to add that I see a comment on the chat from Nectaria Apostolido. Apologize already for the pronunciation. And it says, thank you for the interesting presentation. Speaking about Greece, I also strongly believe that there is a lack in early intervention of problematic cannabis use. In my opinion, a controversial issue is the values and the attitude towards cannabis of the adults, parents, teachers, artists, politicians, etc.
That's right. It's very, very interesting. We can discuss about it, especially in prevention. It's true that the public image that it has been created about cannabis, and not today, because it started a long time ago with this perception of the cannabis like a very fancy and a very cool substance. But it's still, even if this idea is very, very antique, but it is still persists, this perception of the cannabis like as fancy, like a cool substance. Even I think that there has been, especially in US, some kind of campaign talking about to be smart, use marijuana and things like that. That is very, very, very curious, the perception that we have got. First, to talk about prevention, I want if there is some experience or some opinion about what do you think that are the main barriers to access and to adherence of programs, and if you have got any kind of work for problematic cannabis users, as we said before, with leisure time, in relapse prevention, in the prevention of relapse, because it's a very popular substance. It's very useful to find people smoking THC, smoking derivatives. So if you have got any kind of specific relapse prevention for cannabis users, any experience?
I see that Uriel Esculias raised his hand.
Uriel?
Yeah. Well, in terms of access to treatment for adolescents, it comes to my mind a girl, a 60 years old girl that came with her parents last week, and she said that she just took cannabis, smoked cannabis for sleeping. Just once they had dinner, once she went to bed, then she smoked every day joint marijuana. So this was the only time of the day that take marijuana. And you know what I mean, that how can you deal with that in terms of treatment? Because you don't usually, you are used to another kind of patterns. So my conclusion would be that treatment facilities, the organizations should adapt to the new patterns. Basically, adolescents, where they construct, I would say, different and very new meanings of using drugs like cannabis. And so I think the practitioners should renovate the way we treat, not only the methodology, the tools we use, but the paradigm. But still with an umbrella, trying to achieve high standards of abstinence, for instance, abstinence. But until you get the abstinence goal, no, I think that the path, and the pace should be extremely changed.
I think what you said was impossible before the turn of the century, that you use it to go to sleep, because it didn't work. It only works now with a higher percentage of THC. That's one thing. Also, the drugs were not seen as medication or helping you for stress and so. But in your case, I think when a young girl is using medication, sleeping pills, you would also say, in my view, stop your pills and see what happens, and what are your thoughts, what are your problems keeping you out of sleep. So it takes more time for a doctor to do that than to give sleeping pills. And in our country now, there's a big, how you call it, the attitude of the doctors now, sleeping pills, okay, but only maybe for 2 weeks. And then nobody gets a recipe for longer, because you need to see it's not a normal situation that you go to sleep with pills. And that can be also the attitude to using drugs for, because you want to sleep, because that's the main, what you said, the main reason that young people are starting to use it now. Not to have fun together with friends, but because they feel that they cannot go to sleep well, or they feel a lot of stress, and it helps them in the beginning. But before they know, they cannot stop. And that is the biggest risk that you can have. So in case it takes a lot of time to find out, some time to find out what's wrong with the kid, but they're definitely in young adolescents are usually a lot of problems anyway. And then you can talk about that.
I would like to say one thing about what Oriol says. I think that this is the key. I think that the change of paradigms is the key to work today with actual cannabis users. So maybe we have got in our mind, because most of us has been trained in recovery-oriented programs, and in recovery-oriented programs with the abstinence as the main objective and things like that. But when we are working with young cannabis users or with adult cannabis users, as there is one question in the chat, that have been using cannabis for a long time, and we achieve one moment in which the life standards are good, are correct, in which the emotional standards are the proper ones, with no conflicts, even with some kind of personal development, empowerment. So I think that maybe we have to understand that these are the standards of care for problematic cannabis users. Or maybe at least we have to discuss that what the standards that we previously established for other problematic drug users are not working for cannabis, and we have to make some changes maybe not in the goal, but in the path, during the path. Maybe the recovery pathway for problematic cannabis users can be different than other recovery pathways. And I think that this can be the key to understand and also to develop different and more useful, because the problem now is that the cannabis treatments sometimes are not perceived, even for experts, for informants, not only for cannabis use, for informants, that's not totally useful. Maybe it's the key to understand that we can develop programs more adapted and more useful for the people that has got the problem. I think that it can be the key to make a change of paradigms in the addictive intervention, and not only to talk about harm reduction, because maybe it's not necessary to talk about harm reduction. Maybe what we're going to talk is to adapt the goals and the tasks to the process of the person. That I think that this is an idea that is not out of our minds, because all of us has got this idea of personal adaptation and things like that. So it can be useful, this change of paradigm. So
I would like to link what you just said to the question posed in the chat with Christiana Valle-Pires. Some of that you've already answered, but let me just read it out loud. What about the older cannabis users that were using cannabis for several years and even decades? Probably the cannabis-related problems are different from those experienced by younger groups of users. I would also like to hear about cannabis use among women and gender-specific challenges to treatment.
That's two very good questions. Yes, when we talk about cannabis, we normally identify clearly cannabis use with young people. That's not true. Young people can be the most vulnerable group, but it's not the only group, the only risk group when we're talking about cannabis use. For example, cannabis users that has been drug users older than 40 years also can be a problematic use for the kind of consequences they may have for their personal abilities, or even persons that have used cannabis as main substance for a long time. And maybe we have to motivate them to understand that, as we said before, to control, to decrease the use of cannabis, and to decrease some kind of problems that may have for the use of cannabis. And other vulnerable group that we have detected in the study are women. And women and other factors. Women with children, women without job, women that have suffered sexual trafficking or sexual harassment. So we're talking about not only women, it's women, and as I said in the presentation, intersectionality. We have detected 2-3 aspects that increase the risk of women to have problematic use of cannabis. So also women are another group that needs an adaptation of cannabis programs, because they have specific situations, specific patterns, and specific factors that need a specific attendance in this case. There are more questions before to pass to prevention?
Well, there are still questions in the chat.
That's right.
Yes, there is a question from Priscilla Almeida. One of my questions is the intervention about how we can motivate these young users to the treatment, because the group pressure and the need to be part of is huge.
That's right. This is another very beautiful question that also was in the study. We have to understand that problematic cannabis users under treatment, or when they start the treatment, they're going to start only for external motivation. So if we are looking for, in the first step, internal motivation, we are not going to find it, because are going to be external motivation. So the internal motivation is going to be during the process. For example, one of the evidence-based practices that are working really good for cannabis users are the reinforcement approach, are the motivation based in rewards. if you achieve this goal, you will find you will give this reward, and it's working for cannabis users, and it started to work. I think first experiences with CRA started for cannabis users, for young cannabis users started, I think 10 or 12 years ago, and they are working, and they work. So, but well, they work. But what we are not going to find, maybe in one case and some kind of miracle, but we're going to find external motivation, and we need to use external motivation strategies in the first etap. Open questions, no confrontation, trying not to convince the people to make any kind of treatment. So we need to use external motivation strategies. So we don't need to make strange things. It's necessary to understand that the first etap always, close to always, mostly of the cases, are going to be by external motivation. That is the key, and we need to understand it, because sometimes when they start in the program, we say no, they are not motivated. Yes, for sure, they are not motivated. They are not motivated. It's not a problem, and we have to work with people that are not motivated, because the first step needs to be the change of motivation. That is not simple to work in practitioners, for practitioners. I understand in practice it's more difficult, but all practitioners that has done motivational interview and know the differences between the external motivation and internal motivation. So we have to understand that for cannabis users are going to be first etap for sure external motivation, for sure.
And just to start with the chunk on prevention, there is a comment from Catarina Paiva
That's right.
that I guess in Portugal more information is needed. With the recent alterations in the law in medical cannabis, it's important to inform young people and also adults to see cannabis as a drug. Legal market is a reality, and the presence of cannabis is a reality. People must be well informed to make good choices and use cannabis when it is necessary to help in a disease or to help to a better environment, but consumption of cannabis recreationally is not a good option.
There is one problem with this message, and I want to be in the other side right now. A lot of people that are going to use recreational cannabis are not going to have any kind of problem for this recreational cannabis use. So it's very difficult to explain, and we need to find the way to explain that the problematical cannabis use is for the recreational use and factors involved for the people and for the community and for the family and for these other factors. So it's not only that the therapeutic use is safe, the recreational use can be safe. No. There are some factors that interact, and that's what create these problems, because most of the people that are going to the recreational cannabis are not going to have any kind of problem. And it's true that it's necessary much more information, much more clear information, talking about the positive and the negative effects. I think that it's very important to explain both aspects. And it's true that we have got now around us a very strong legal market, a very powerful legal market, with a lot of economy, with a lot of marketing, sending a lot of messages, of very powerful messages, very well structured messages, because most of the messages are very clear, very direct, very well focused for the core groups. So we need to find alternative ways to express that these ideas, trying to prevent and to detect what can be the problematic cannabis use.
It's dangerous already if a person uses alone.
Yeah.
You can have students becoming drunk together, having a party. Doesn't have to be a problem. Also, having fun to use drugs together, it can be fun. But when people start to use alone and go alone to a dealer because they have the feeling that they need it, then you have a big problem already.
Yes.
And that you have to tell people that even if it's so-called, well, they take a blow at night. No, this is really already a serious thing.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Even in the definition of what is a problematic cannabis use, the idea that we express is the functional idea. Maybe you can use cannabis, but if it doesn't affect to your educational activities, to your recreational activities, to your social activities, to your family activities, to your job activities, maybe it's not a problem. Maybe you are using cannabis, but maybe it's not a problem. But if you are not using a lot of cannabis, but it's affecting now to your education, to your social relations, to your family personal relations, to the use of your leisure time. Hey man, I don't know if you are using more or less, but maybe you are developing a problem with the cannabis use. So I think that also we have to change this idea about what is problematic or what is not, using much more functional analysis when talking, because if you use the clinical analysis, it's very simple, but maybe we are talking about people that don't have this kind of consequence, but and we need to, and also it's easier when we're working with motivation of people, and we're working with the understanding of the people to make something about the cannabis use. If you talk to them about what is happening in these areas, not only the cannabis use, in these areas in your life, and do you want to change in these areas in your life, and start to make a different process, trying to find another steps for your life that I think is completely, absolutely normal.
You can see it in our country in Holland, that until the year 2000,
I apologize. I just being mindful about the time. We have 10 minutes left and still a few questions.
Okay, I shall be very short.
That's right. So let's go to talk about.
In the Netherlands, there were no referrals for treatment of cannabis until the year 2000, more or less. So before that time, people were used to use it for fun or whatever, say together. After the year 2000, for the first time, there came people only for their use of cannabis to treatment services. Now it is the drug most common among treatment services for addiction, because now the drug is not the same, but the use has changed. The use has changed for solitary use, for miserable people that have no idea what to do.
That's right. That's right. They're going to talk a little bit about prevention, about the proposal to implement the selective and indicated prevention programs, about the family involvement, and we have said about it, but if you have got more experience, about the training needs for professionals, that I think that is a very important topic. I don't know if there are more questions in the chat.
Yes, there is a comment from Albert Lagerweg saying that apart from medical cannabis, do we want to regulate cannabis after all? I would say we keep this for the very end.
That's right.
There is a question from Karen Mamo, and she's saying, it is important to highlight that problematic substance use is an intricate reality and not only linked to the chemical composition of the substance.
That's quite good.
An interesting aspect about cannabis is the balancing role of CBD. CBD considered when treating problematic substance use. Another substance promising to act as anesthetic drugs are psilocybin mushrooms. What do you think about this?
Yeah, well, about the mushroom and many other hallucinogens are very delicate, so it's necessary to develop clinical trials, because this is a very antique discussion about the lysergic therapy and all those hallucinogens therapies that is still very controversial. The results and the outcomes of those experiences are that they are much more risky than give benefits for the people. So it's complicated. For sure, you can find positive results in some studies, and it's real that the risk of the use is very high, because we are talking about, for example, the same predictors that we don't use to explain the people that they can use cannabis. There are a lot of people that has got, for example, emotional problems, so it's not recommended to use any kind of hallucinogens for those people. So it's very complicated, especially when you are young, to understand that you can't use those substances. So it's delicate. About CBD, it was a very interesting comment about CBD for one informant in the study. She said that CBD is now considered like it was a shamanic substance that's supposed to be like some kind of therapeutic substance that has got no risk, and it maybe they has got less risk with THC, but it's true that all these powers that are given to CBD are not so clear and hasn't got less evidence sometimes. This is, for example, that people that are working in cannabis harm reduction, they're using CBD, not THC. So they provide CBD for the people that are using cannabis. But it's true also that it's necessary much more research about CBD than to before to explain if this is possible to use as a substitution of THC or other substance. It's true that there are programs that are using it, so it's not, but it's true that there is still not enough evidence about if it's working or not, or even if CBD can be a bridge to a post use of THC again. So it's still a little bit controversial. We don't have about this topic enough long-term research. We need much more research about it. That's right. So about prevention, any comment that you want to express, any experience that you want to express? That's right. Yeah, Karen is expressing that CBD is always recommended to use with THC. Yes, it's true. It's true. That is.
Well, I'm happy that you have set up this session to talk about something that's usually not talked about, because we usually are focused on the more dangerous so-called drugs. But of course, the cannabis addiction can be also ruining the relationships that you have yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much. There are any other aspects that you can express, particular cases, successful examples? I said before about reforming approach. Oriol said the experience, expressed the experience of Proyecto Joven, that is, it's a very interesting example of early intervention treatment. Dr. Koyman also expressed several examples of practices that have checked their efficiency for the cannabis intervention. And is there any other?
Yeah, I would like to say that as time is running, if you have any other examples or best practices that you would like to share, please send it to us, to Dianova at dianova.org, and we will include it, because we will prepare a short brief notice on this meeting, and so we can include it as well if you wish. And so
yeah.
There are many topics that are left that we didn't have enough time to discuss it, but we wanted to end with a final question that actually just reopens the whole debate, but we will do the Slido again, if you're up to that. Can you put one more slide, please?
Yes,
I would like to receive copies of the research that was done from you.
Yes, it's on the website. We'll send you the link. The link is on the chat already.
Yeah.
So it's on Dianova's website.
I may send some material that I have from the situation in Holland.
Okay. So if you go again to Slido with the same code, or if you're still in there, you will see a final question. And with this, we will end the session.
The last one. This is the last one.
So we're getting votes. Thank you. We'll give some more time, as some of you may have closed the application. Just one more minute. let me close it here. Now you can open it.
That's right. What is your opinion on cannabis recreational use? It should be legalized at 0%. It should be regulated 64%. It should remain as it is 27%, other 9%. So this is the other part of the discussion. is that there is, even in people that as us are working in treatment, in recovery, on research about cannabis use and problematic cannabis use, there is one idea, one sense about that maybe it's necessary to regulate cannabis use, recreational cannabis use, not only therapeutic cannabis use. There are discussion, maybe. So we have, if even inside us we have this perception, it's necessary to be ready for this situation. So what I think is that we need to dedicate time, the time that you may find, to refine and to re-examine the kind of offer of treatments and prevention programs that we are showing now about cannabis use for problematic cannabis users and for non-problematic cannabis users too. So that is what I think that even in our poll is expressed, that maybe we have to dedicate time to talk about the consequences of regulation cannabis use and the health and social responses to our recreational cannabis use regulation. That's right.
Well, with that, thank you very much all for joining us. Thank you very much for participating. As I said, if you want to send us more information to share it with all of you, we'll be happy to do so. With that, I wish you a very nice day. Thank you very much and stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Laura, thanks.
Bye.
Cuidado mucho.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Muito obrigado. Grazie mille.
Bon courage to everybody.
Muchas
Thank you.
Okay.
gracias. Thanks to you, Fernand. Lot of
Okay,
thanks,
bye-bye.
Fernand. Bye.
Congratulations also.
Lot of thanks.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Good
To
to see
you.
you.
Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Hopefully.
Yes. In person, hopefully.
It would be great, but man, I'm not sure about it.
Yes. Yes.
It would be great. Really.
Yes.
At least here in the screen. At least.
Adiós, adiós.
Adiós.
Besos a todas. Faidón, chao, chao.